echo in here? Is there an echo in here? Is there an echo in here? Anyway, a while back I uploaded a video called Compressors Go Squish, great title, huh? Where I assembled a bunch of hardware compressors and used them to process sounds in different ways whilst making a piece of music, the idea being that you guys could then try those ideas in your own productions. Now that video went down very well and I've had a number of messages and comments and emails from people asking if I can do something in the same vein, and I've assembled a plethora of echoes, delays, reverbs. We've got tape, we've got springs, we've got BBD, we've got digital, both old and new. So let's go. So first I'm going to use the greatest drum machine of all time, the Korg Super Drums, and I'm going to pair it with our first unit, also a Korg, the GR1 gated reverb from the 1980s. Now a gated reverb is a reverb that is followed immediately by a gate that slams the effect closed. That's not a natural sound, which is why it's interesting. The GR1 has a stereo pair of springs, a gate and a reverb EQ. Let's set up the sound. So I wanted to use this unit because the combination of stereo springs and a gate is quite unusual, and it illustrates the fact that any reverb, plate, chamber, room, hall, convolution, etc. can be placed before a gate, so why not have an experiment with that yourself? For a layer, I've set up some modular drums on the System 100M, and I've got this pair of Boss RPS 10s. These are digital delays, but they also have an option to pitch shift the audio that's temporarily recorded into the delay line. There's then a connection in the rear to modulate the pitch shifting with an external audio signal. I don't know of any other unit that does that. So here's a tom sound that's pitch shift is modulated by an oscillator that in turn is modulated by an LFO. For the second sound, I've just used a very tight delay. Here's that. And here's the two together with the earlier drums. So the point here being to look out for digital delays that have unusual sampling or pitch shifting features, as you can do some less obvious things with them. For the interlude section of the track, I'll switch to the Roland TR-08 because I wanted to show a trick of using a Eurorack splitter cable to duplicate a mono signal. This can then be sent to two different pedals for a distinct left and right. On one side I have a DM2 providing a fast delay with just the right amount of feedback for that metallic comb filter type sound. Here's that. On the other side, I'm using a flanger, which is also a kind of audio delay, but with a very short time. Here's that. And here's the two together in stereo. Over the top we'll lay down some Oberheim DX, but dry as we already have enough shenanigans going on, and we'll call that the drums. Okay, some guitar chords. I'm moving over to a Swedish Amtech analog delay, and as it has no digital clocking, I have to tempo match it manually, which isn't going to be exactly right, but that's good. It makes it a little looser and less static. Have a listen. I'm then going to send on that signal to Syntrix, where I can route it through the filters and spring reverb, but also the ring modulator, where I'm combining it with an oscillator that's being swept by the trapezoid or trapezoid in time to the track. The whole thing now sounds like this. So the point here being to think where else you can go after your delay to make it a bit more colourful. Next, an old Multivox MX312, which is a tape delay and spring reverb combination, but it also does sound on sound. So I'm going to set it fast and play in a flurry of notes from the Prophet, then pitch it down and tune it. This will provide one atmosphere, and I'll do something related but with a modern Big Sky pedal. I'll set the signal to 100% wet and feed in a held chord from the Jupiter, so it's just a wash of sound rather than an obvious chord. So that's two different approaches to creating atmospheres, one analog and one digital. I'm also going to add some synth bass and vocals, but keep those more simple as we already have enough effects going on right now. Let's have a listen and then I'll sum up. It's the same on the inside too. It's broken but we'll get by. Say and do, it's true how the land lies. We can all see the outline too. It's broken but we'll get by. Say and do, it's cold on the outside. It's the same on the inside too. It's broken but we'll get by. Say and do, it's true how the land lies. We can all see the outline too. It's broken but we'll get by. Say and do. It's cold on the outside, it's the same on the inside too. It's broken but we'll get by. Say and do, it's true how the land lies. We can all see the outline too. It's broken but we'll get by. Say and do, it's cold on the outside, it's the same on the inside too. It's broken but we'll get by. Say and do, it's true how the land lies. We can all see the outside too. It's broken but we'll get by. Say and do. Say and do. Say and do. So there was the contextual track, which hopefully should give you some ideas of how you could use this in your own music. So 6 tips for you to take away. Number 1, as I showed you with the GR1, Absolutely any reverb can go before a gate. It doesn't have to be the sound of Phil Collins in the 1980s. So in the case of the GR1, it's stereo springs. So think a convolution reverb, which in itself can be pretty much anything imaginable, could run into a gate. So something for you to try there. Tip number 2, look out for delays that have additional features like pitch shifting or sampling or LFOs or anything, especially if they had mod inputs on the rear, because as I showed with the 100M and the RPS 10s, you can then create sounds that you can't create with run-of-the-mill delays. Tip 3, think about using a Eurorack splitter cable like this Hoser one. They're very inexpensive, and then you can take a mono signal and go out in 2 different ways when you have those 2 different things going left and right. That could be quite interesting. Tip 4, as I did with the Age 1, think about using a delay, either analog or digital, that isn't clocked by a digital clock, and see what that does to the feel of your music. Tip 5, think what happens after your delay. So I ran that Age 1 into Syntrix here, and as well as the spring reverb and the filters, I also ran it through the ring modulator with an oscillator that was swept by the envelope of the Syntrix, which was triggered by the key step below me in the latter part of the bar. So you got the delay at the start of the bar, and then you got a sweep of the ring modulator, which is more interesting than just the delay on its own. And lastly, tip number 6, think about using a device that does sound on sound and running in a flurry of continuous notes, so you just get a blur, like I did with the Prophet. I then pitched it down to tune it. I just use that for an atmosphere, but you could create chords or whole pieces of tonal music that way. Maybe that's another video. If you're thinking, where am I going to get a tape delay? Well, something like El Capistan here does that as well. So there are digital ways and more affordable ways to do that. Related, running a sound into a reverb that has its mix set to 100% wet, so that all you hear is the reverb but not the actual original tone source itself. So again, you just get that kind of plume of music, which is lovely. Okay, so there we go. I hope that was interesting. I hope it's given you some ideas of things to try. If you guys do experiments and find other things as well, let me know, because I'd love tips too. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.